So there you go, Springbok fans. Pool B fixtures all wrapped up, waiting next weekend to see what happens between Ireland and Scotland, but most likely heading into a quarter-final in second place in Pool B after a pretty good performance, really, against Tonga. That's what we're getting into in the video. Certainly a challenge, probably the best performance that Tonga have produced in this World Cup so far, but from a Springbok perspective, it is job done. So let me know in the comments section, what did you make of it? What did you make of the performances? What did you make of whatever you were looking out for in terms of the Springboks in this game? And also, if you can like the video and subscribe to the channel as well, if you can hit that subscribe button, I massively appreciate it. Let's get into it though. So 49-18 for the Springboks against Tonga, and against a good Tongan side, by the way. I'll come on to them in just a moment, but I think it was the best performance we've probably seen from them in this World Cup. They didn't make things easy for the Springboks at all, and certainly the first 20 minutes of the game or so, it looked like it might be a closer encounter than we expected. Ultimately, I always thought that the Boks would have enough and pull away and get a pretty comfortable victory. That was the case, and actually even by halftime you were looking at it and you thought that the Springboks weren't going to be too troubled. They weren't going to be made to sweat too much in this game. But having said that, and despite it being a pretty handsome scoreline in the end against a good Tongan side, this to me looked like a South African side that had played their fourth game in as many weeks, had played a number of tough games in this pool, because they looked tired a little bit. And I know there's been rotation, rest and rotation, new players coming on. I'll mention Andre Pollard in just a second. But this was a bruising encounter, and at first it looked to trouble South Africa. In the end, they had too much quality. But I think they can now sit back, rest up, put their feet up, and it looks likely that they will be heading into a quarter-final. We'll see what happens between Ireland and Scotland, but it's a pretty tall order for it not to be the case that the Boks will be going through. So we'll wait and see what happens. But everyone spoke about this as being the toughest World Cup pool that we have ever seen coming into it. And you look at the Springbok fixtures, playing Scotland in their first game, then having Romania, then having that brilliant but incredibly testing match against Ireland, and then playing Tonga, who are no mugs, and certainly from a physicality standpoint was a pretty tough matchup for the Springboks to have as their fourth game in 4 weeks. So they'll be glad for the rest. They'll be glad to get to the end of the pool stages. And I think if you look at it actually from South Africa's point of view, what did they want to get out of this game? What was it that Jacques Nienaber and Rassie Erasmus and all the leadership of that team really wanted from this match? Because most of us, even though we respect what Tonga can do and they gave a good account of themselves, we're expecting the Springboks to win. And there's probably a few things that stand out to me. So it's number one, Andre Pollard coming back. And this was not an easy game for Pollard to come back into at all, because Tonga played well. Their defence at times was very well organised, very physical. They absolutely bang in defence, we know that. And so for Pollard, who hasn't played much rugby at all, came off the bench for Leicester Tigers basically in a pre-season friendly, hasn't played for the Springboks in over a year. It's a tough environment, it's a tough game to come back into. I think the fact that he came through the game, that he got minutes in his legs, didn't get injured, gave a fairly good account of himself, his kicking was good. I think that's a big plus for the Springboks moving forward in the tournament. Whether they're starting Andre Pollard or whether he's an option off the bench, just to have him back in that team, playing again in the system, is a major tick in the positive column for this game for the Springboks. I mentioned the kicking, that overall was better, not just Pollard but also Marnie Libbok. I know we're going to keep talking about it, it is going to continue to be a talking point, particularly ahead of a quarter-final, but the fact that both of those guys looked pretty on their game from a kicking point of view was another positive for the Springboks. And then players were rested and rotated and they got points on the board. You never know, it could come down to points difference in this group. 49-18, decent scoreline for the Springboks. So from that point of view, it was job done. And we've seen them use their squad again. And actually, it was kind of interesting. In the preview I did of this game, I said that the most interesting thing wasn't Andre Pollard coming back. It was Dion Fourie and Marco van Staden at hookers and how they went. In the end, it probably didn't quite become that, because I thought it was interesting. Early on in the first half, I don't think Tonga competed at the line-out enough. And I think on quite a lot of occasions, that was because they were worried about South Africa's driving maul, so they didn't put anyone up. But just with a Dion Fourie throwing in at the line-out, I would have thought they might try and put more pressure on that throw. So I think we maybe didn't learn as much about that hooker position and the guys that are behind Bongi and Benambi in terms of the depth chart of that team. We maybe didn't find out as much about them as I was probably expecting, but they both did well. I mean, Dion Ferry was good at the line-out. I don't think he was as challenged as he would be against other teams, but even so, he did well. Marco van Staden came on and put in a good shift as well. So that was an area that I think maybe there are still question marks about for South Africa, and I was perhaps thinking that they would be tested a little bit more. Let's get on to Tonga. There was a few things I wanted to say about them. Mentioned it already. I think this is their best performance at this World Cup so far. I can imagine that the Springbok fans, you can let me know in the comments, that you were probably watching the early parts of this game thinking, why do they have to turn up like this against us when it's the fourth game we've played in 4 weeks? We just want to get to the end of the pool stages, because they look really, really good. And you look at, in particular, I think, I've mentioned the defence, but you look at the South African defence in this World Cup, even against Ireland, only conceding the one try, being incredibly watertight. Tonga ran in a couple of tries against them. And I think that is a reflection. I know not the Springboks first team, lots of rest and rotation, etc., etc. But even so, South Africa previously have been able to rotate, and their defence has still been excellent at keeping teams out. So the fact that Tonga scored the tries that they did, I think, is a reflection of how well they played. As I say, I think they should have challenged the line out a little bit more, but it was a really good display from them. And I suppose with all of the teams like Tonga or Samoa, you just want to see them improve. And for Tonga at this World Cup, maybe we haven't quite seen some of the performances we expected. I think a lot of people saw Piatau and Fekatoa, Coleman coming back into the team and were thinking that it would immediately lead to vastly improved results. This is probably a reflection that it goes beyond that. It's about training time together. It's about game time against the top teams. So maybe, and we can all hope for this, eventually we start to see that more, but that's probably over to World Rugby and for them to sort out some sort of global schedule that works for everyone. I won't hold my breath because we've all been waiting a little while. But overall, for South Africa, as I've said a number of times in the video, it's job done. I think they'll go through to the quarterfinals. I think they are most likely going to play France. And in that game, it will be a great occasion. And actually, I think South Africa, and I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit because we have to wait and see what happens next weekend. I think South Africa will relish that. Against the hosts, in Paris, an opportunity to really upset the home nation, who are expectant, who are hoping for this team to make their dreams come true of winning a first World Cup title on home soil. I think that could be an occasion that this Springbok team absolutely relishes. But we'll wait and see whether they get there or not. I suspect that they probably will. In terms of the Tonga game, South Africa were good. We know they're good. They will have other challenges to come later in this World Cup. So drop a comment down below. Let me know what you made of it. What did you make of the return of Andre Pollard? What did you make of the rotation within this Springbok team? And what did you make of the way they faced up to this Tongan challenge, who certainly gave it to them, particularly in the early parts of that game? I look forward to reading your comments. Make sure you like the video as well, and also subscribe to the channel. Let's get us to 10,000 as quickly as we can. But I'll see you in the next one.